Welcome to the JCTLM database review process. This video will provide an introduction and overview of the submission process and links to other helpful resources. Whether you are an experienced user, this is your first time through the submission process, or you are just trying to learn more, we hope you will find some valuable information. If you still have questions after the video, please reach out to the JCTLM Secretariat. The database is a freely accessible source for all parties interested in metrological traceability. It is an aid for the implementation of the traceability chain by in vitro diagnostic medical devices, leading to standardization of laboratory results used in clinical care. The primary purpose of listing in the database is for promotion of reference materials, measurement procedures, and services that conform to the relevant ISO standards described later. You will need a copy of the relevant ISO standards to prepare your submission. The best place to start is on the JCTLM webpage and navigating to the Database Submissions tab. Here you can find the status of the current review cycle, links for the current cycle's procedures and forms, the annual schedule for the JCTLM nomination and review processes, and other helpful and interesting information. It is important to note that there are two types of nominations, those for reference materials and methods, and those for reference measurement services. Ensure you select the appropriate templates and forms for your nomination type. Many resources, including policies, procedures, instructions, and templates, can be accessed by navigating to the next tab of the website, Database Procedures. Before submitting your nomination for consideration, please use the appropriate template and refer to the relevant instructions to ensure your package is complete. Again, note that there are different documents for the submission of reference materials and reference measurement procedures, and for reference measurement services. It is very important that you complete all areas of the spreadsheet submission form, as any missing information or inadequate documentation may lead to the rejection of the submission. It is a requirement for all mandatory elements of the standard to be addressed with a response. This is especially important when completing the nomination templates for the reference materials and measurement procedures, which both have two tabs within the template workbook. The JCTLM Secretariat will screen nominations for completion. There can be new submissions or resubmissions of previous nominations with deficiencies addressed. The nominations are then distributed to the appropriate review team. Review teams are made up of experts in the respective analytical areas and are all volunteering their time and knowledge. Relevant ISO standards are referred to while assessing submissions. For methods, the relevant standard for reference is ISO 15193. For materials, the relevant standard is ISO 15194. For services, the laboratory must be accredited to ISO 17025 and incorporate ISO 15195. For a new nomination, the review team will assess the submission components against the relevant standards and agree on findings. For a resubmission of an existing nomination, the team will review responses to deficiencies and additional evidence provided, and agree upon or clear deficient findings from a previous review. Please use the checklist to review frequently observed deficiencies in past submissions and recommendations on how to ensure suitable information and documentation are included in your submission. The types of potential findings observed by the various review teams can be major, minor, or observation. A major noncompliance indicates that an element of the ISO standard is missing or has been incompletely or inadequately addressed, making the nomination inadequately demonstrated to be fit for purpose. A major noncompliance prevents listing in the JCTLM database. The reference material or method may be listed in the JCTLM database if the corrective action is completed and accepted within a time set by the review team. The nomination with corrective action may also be resubmitted for the next review cycle. A minor noncompliance indicates lack of adequate implementation for an element of the ISO standard, but does not prevent being fit for purpose. A minor noncompliance will not prevent listing in the JCTLM database. A minor noncompliance is expected to be corrected within a time set by the review team, or the entry will be delisted. Multiple minor noncompliances may be classified as a major noncompliance, with corrective actions required before listing. An observation is a finding, either positive or negative, which is noted by the review team, but does not imply a noncompliance to the elements of a standard and does not prevent listing in the JCTLM database. Observations may be addressed by the nominator to improve the quality of the listing. This information is also found in the Review and Approval of Nominations for Materials and Methods document. In December, during a meeting held at the BIPM, the nomination review findings are presented for discussion and approval to the leaders of all the review teams and representatives of the JCTLM Executive Committee. The final reports for each submission are then reviewed at the JCTLM Executive Committee meeting, where they are approved or amended. Finally, the Secretariat will communicate the outcome to the nominating organizations. This may be notice of publication of their nomination into the database or provision of the review working group report where answers to questions or additional supporting evidence are required. Where additional information is required, the nomination may be resubmitted into the next year review cycle. Thank you for your interest in the JCTLM review process. Please reach out with any additional questions, and good luck. Welcome to the JCTLM database review process. This video will provide more information and guidance specific for the submission of reference measurement methods and procedures for listing in the JCTLM database. It is recommended to become familiar with the submission process, the requested information, and the relevant quality and standard requirements well before the deadline of the submission cycle, as it could take a considerable amount of time to collect and clearly document the required information. Laboratories submitting a method for listing as a reference measurement procedure in the JCTLM database must follow the quality and documentation requirements as described in ISO 15193. If your laboratory has developed the method according to this standard, you should have all the required information at hand, and you just have to fill in the requested sections of the nomination template and provide the supporting documentation. All the information and documentation that you need to prepare your submission can be found on the JCTLM website. Click Database Procedures, then scroll down to Process for Materials and Methods. Here you can find links to download helpful and necessary files. The first document, P01A, gives an overview of the different processes by which the JCTLM database executive team, working group, and review teams make recommendations for listing reference measurement materials and methods. If you plan to submit your laboratory's method for listing in the JCTLM database, you will mainly need to focus on the procedures P02A and P03A. In addition, If the nominated method is for an analyte that is already listed in the JCTLM database, the procedure P04B will be relevant to demonstrate extent of equivalence. Let's focus on P02A for requesting a nomination for a reference measurement procedure. Here are the documents related to this process. P02A is an informative document describing the process and requirements for a complete nomination submission package. P02A F02 is the nomination Excel spreadsheet form that you will fill in with the submission information. Template instructions are found in the document P02A I01, and P04B is a document describing the process of comparing an RMP nomination to an already existing RMP of the same measurand. Let's take a look at the nomination Excel spreadsheet. Click on the document link, download, and open the Excel file. Please note that there are two tabs within the spreadsheet. The first tab, Reference Methods Template, is used to list your RMP nomination and some key details. If you are submitting more than one analyte, please complete additional lines for each additional matrix analyte combination or analyte method combination. The second tab, Compliance Template, is used to show compliance by listing details that meet the requirements of ISO 15193. If the requested information is clearly described in a report accompanying the nomination, please mention the relevant section of the report in this list and ensure to include that report with the nomination submission package. When submitting an RMP nomination for a measurand already listed in the JCTLM database, please refer to P04B. JCTLM requires documentation to show that the results using a new RMP are equivalent to those from an existing listed RMP. If the results of an extent of equivalent study indicate discordance among the evaluated reference measurement procedures relative to fit-for-purpose criteria, the procedure under review will not be accepted for listing in the JCTLM database until the discrepancy is explained. For additional suggestions for preparing a successful submission package, please refer to the document P02I02, which is found at the top of the Database Procedures page under Common Procedures. Download and open the Excel spreadsheet and click on the RMP tab. Here you will find a compiled list of frequently observed nonconformances, along with guidance on correcting or improving the submission. For example, Clause 4.6 refers to the description of the measurement principle and method chosen, which must be described in sufficient detail that there is no ambiguity in the procedure. You should carefully check that the cited publication is correct and complete. Any differences between a publication and the actual measurement procedure submitted as the RMP need to be fully described. It is required to submit a standard operating procedure, SOP, or similar document to describe any methodological information or performance metrics which are not fully described or are modified from what is in the publication. The layout of this document should align to the clauses of ISO 15193. Clause 4.14.9 requires the combined uncertainty of the measured value from the RMP to be determined. The uncertainty must include the influence of all sources of variability, including uncertainty of calibrators, and must be described in sufficient detail to demonstrate that all meaningful contributors of the uncertainty of the measured value were captured. The combined uncertainty of the measured value must be given as standard uncertainty and expanded uncertainty with a stated coverage factor. Again, the more detailed documentation you are able to provide, the higher the chances of a successful review of your nomination. Thank you for your interest in the JCTLM review process. Please reach out to the Secretariat with any additional questions, and good luck.
Welcome to the instruction videos for the JCTLM database review process. This video will provide more information and guidance specific for the submission of certified reference materials for listing in the JCTLM database.
It is recommended to become familiar with the submission process, the requested information, and the relevant quality and standard requirements well before the deadline of the submission cycle, as it could take a considerable amount of time to collect and clearly document the required information. Reference material producers submitting a reference material for listing as a higher order reference material in the JCTLM database must follow the quality and documentation requirements as described in the ISO standard 15194. The second version of this standard, which was published in 2009, is the relevant version for the current submissions.
If your reference material was developed according to this standard, you should have all the required information at hand, and you just have to fill in the requested sections in the nomination template and provide the supporting documentation. All the information and documentation that you need to prepare your submissions can be found on the JCTLM website under the section Database Procedures. In the introduction document, you can find the three lists that will be used to classify the reference materials of higher metrological order suitable for publication in the JCTLM database. List 1 contains the majority of the reference materials. These materials are certified for well-defined chemical identities or measurements defined by internationally recognized reference methods. The certified values are traceable to the SI. Examples are reference materials certified for the mass fraction of certain proteins like creatinine, but also reference materials for the catalytic activity concentration of enzymes like amylase or the amount of substance fraction of HbA1c fall within this category. List 2 contains the reference materials for which the values of the measurements are not traceable to the SI. They can be international conventional calibrators, as described in the ISO standard 17511, but also other materials assigned by or traceable to an internationally agreed upon protocol. Examples are standards for specific antibodies with assigned values in international units or standards for coagulation factors. List 3 covers the reference material for nominal properties. An example is a DNA material containing a specific nucleotide sequence.
Let us now have a closer look to the documents needed for the submission. As mentioned before, they can now be found on the website under the section Database Procedures. You need to scroll down on this page to the Process for Material and Methods. The first relevant document is the P01A.
This document gives an overview of the different processes by which the JCTLM database working groups and the review teams make recommendation for listing reference materials. At the bottom of this document, you will find the following flowchart. If you plan to submit your reference material for listing in the JCTLM database, you will mainly need to focus on the procedure P02A. If the nominated reference material has an assigned value for a measurement for which there is already a reference material listed, the procedure P04A will be relevant to demonstrate the extent of equivalence. Let us focus on the process P02A for requesting a nomination for a reference material. Here are the documents related to this process. P02A is an informative document describing the process and the requirements for a complete nomination package. P02A F01 is a nomination Excel form that you will need to fill in. The instructions for filling in the template can be found in the document P02A I01. We will now look at the nomination Excel sheet. Please note that there are two tabs within the spreadsheet. The first tab, Reference Material Template, is used to list your reference material nomination and some key details. If you are submitting a set of materials with different levels of one measurement, or one material with assigned values for multiple measurements, please complete additional lines for each combination of material and measurement. The second tab, Compliance Template, is used to prove compliance by listing the evidence for each of the relevant requirements of ISO 15194. If the requested information is clearly described in a reference material report, please mention the relevant section of the report in this list and ensure to include that report with the submission package. For additional suggestions for preparing a successful submission package, please also refer to the document P02I02, which can be found at the top of the database procedure webpage. In this Excel file, you will find a compiled list of the most frequently observed non-conformances, along with guidance for correcting or improving the submission. There is a tab specific for the reference material submissions. Now we will discuss 3 examples of frequently observed issues.
The first one concerns class 5.1, referring to the hierarchical position of the nominated reference material in the reference measurement system. The terms to be used in this class are based on the descriptions found in the ISO standard ISO 17511. There are several options. The reference material can be the pure form of the analyte and therefore take the role of the primary reference material at position M1 of the traceability chain. Or the reference material consists of the measurement in a matrix that mimics the real clinical samples and is intended to calibrate many different measurement procedures. Then it takes the position M3 in the traceability chain. In some exceptional cases, the reference material can take position M2 if it is the pure analyte already provided in a solution ready to be used for the reference measurement procedure. In the case that the nominated reference material is an international conventional calibrator, it also takes position M3 of the traceability chain. Some reference materials might not be intended to be used as calibrators, but for trueness control of certain measurement procedures. In this case, the clause 5.1 can be answered by filling in not applicable because intended use is trueness control.
The extent of equivalence is an important clause for reference materials certified for a measurement for which there is already an existing certified reference material listed in the JCTLM database. In this situation, the nomination package should also contain a document showing the extent of equivalence data for both the old and the new reference material. For more information on the process that needs to be followed, please refer to the JCTLM document P04A, which can be found on the website under Procedures. The attachments of this document show examples of suitable approaches to display comparison data demonstrating the extent of equivalence. When applicable, please also fill out the relevant section in the reference material nomination template.
Also, the clause 6477 on commutability was not always correctly covered in several submission packages. The evaluation of the commutability of the nominated reference material should be in line with its intended use. Commutability evaluation might therefore not be necessary for an M1 or an M2 calibrator, but it is essential for M3 calibrators. Also, reference materials intended to be used as screwness control for the various measurement procedures should be assessed for their commutability. The evaluation of the commutability of the reference material should be done according to the recommendations of the IFCC Working Group on Commutability. The most relevant publications are shown here, and they are also summarized in the second edition of the CLSI document EP30, which was published in 2024. Please remember, the more detailed information you are able to provide, the higher the chances of a successful review of your nomination. Thank you for your interest in the JCTLM submission and review process. Please reach out to the Secretariat for additional questions, and good luck.
Welcome to the JCTLM database review process. This video will provide more information and guidance specific for the submission of reference measurement services for listing in the JCTLM database. It is recommended to become familiar with the submission process, the requested information, and the relevant quality and standard requirements well before the deadline of the submission cycle, as it could take a considerable amount of time to collect and clearly document the required information. Laboratories submitting for listing as a reference measurement service in the JCTLM database must be accredited according to ISO IEC 17025 and ISO 15195. If your laboratory is accredited and you are following these ISO standards for implementing a measurement procedure, you should have all the required information at hand, and you should just have to fill in the requested sections of the nomination template and provide the supporting documentation. All the information and documentation that you need to prepare your submission can be found on the JCTLM website. Click Database Procedures, then scroll down to Process for Services. Here you can find links to download helpful and necessary files. The first document, P01B, gives an overview of the different processes by which the JCTLM database executive team, working group, and review teams make recommendations for listing reference measurement services. If you plan to submit your laboratory's measurement service for listing in the JCTLM database, you will mainly need to focus on the procedure codes P02B and P03B2. In addition, if your laboratory is considered a National Metrology Institute, or NMI, the procedure 03B1 will be relevant. Let's focus on the procedure 02B for requesting a nomination for a reference measurement laboratory service. Here are the documents related to this process. P02B is an informative document describing the process and requirements for a complete nomination submission package. The document P02B F01 is the nomination Excel spreadsheet form that you will fill in with the submission information. For additional review information, depending on your laboratory type, please also see documents P03B1 for NMIs or document P03B2 for accredited laboratories. For additional suggestions on preparing a successful submission package, please refer to the document P02I02 and click on the RMS tab. Here you will find a compiled list of frequently observed nonconformances, along with guidance on correcting or improving the submission. For example, a common area where nominations are lacking is the laboratory operating a procedure based on a method listed in the JCTLM database? All reference measurement services must implement a reference measurement procedure listed in the JCTLM database and provide the name and identification number in the nomination template. It is important to ensure that your laboratory has submitted a detailed standard operating procedure, or SOP, that demonstrates adherence to the RMP without making any modifications. If there are minor modifications, such as a lower measurement range or the use of a different CRM for calibration, a validation report is required. More significant modifications will require a peer-reviewed publication or a more comprehensive method validation report. These modifications include, but are not limited to, changes to sample preparation, extraction procedures or other isolation techniques for the measurand, changes in liquid chromatography stationary phases, changes of chromatography type, gas to liquid or liquid to gas, or changes to the matrix of the measurand. The more detailed documentation you are able to provide, the higher the chances of a successful review of your nomination. Thank you for your interest in the JCTLM review process. Please reach out to the Secretariat with any additional questions, and good luck.